Okay, good afternoon and welcome everybody to this new episode of our professional talk series hosted by the Department of Translation at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. So our speaker today is Mr. Xie Zhiwei, who works as a senior project manager at Xie Innovations, a top 40 localization company of the world. There, he and his team provide localization service to various game titles, and there are some really big names, as I'm sure you've already seen from our poster. And these games are from top game makers such as Tencent, NetEase, Blizzard, Sony, and so on. So we are very happy and honored to have Mr. Xie today to give us the talk in spite of his very busy schedule. And we're also very happy to welcome Zhiwei back because he's an alumnus from our department where he got his MA degree a couple of years ago. So good to have you back. And as a veteran translator and project manager, he is going to share his experience and insights of working in this very exciting field of game localization. He will also be giving some hard-earned practical advice to anyone who's interested in this booming profession, as I'm sure many of you are. So without further ado, can I ask you to all please welcome Mr. Xie Zhiwei. Now over to you, Zhiwei.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Hello, everyone. My name is Xie Zhiwei. You can call me Spencer. When I received the email from Miranda asking if I was interested to give a career talk about game localization, I was surprised. I think the better word would be shocked. Then I clicked the link she sent me, which navigated me to the department's website. And then I saw that many of the talks are delivered by respected professors and all scholars. The first question popped in is, how am I going to compete with those highly educated academics? Or putting it in other words, how do I avoid humiliate myself in front of you guys? The whole situation is so intimidating for me, but after browsing the website, I found that most of the talks are focusing on interpreting. Then I told myself, well, at least my topic is more friendly and definitely more appealing to the students. It's games after all. Anyways, sorry, I digress. My topic today is game localization. What is it? How do you get in and what's in it for you? The talk will be divided into 4 parts. First, I will give a quick introduction on the game and the game localization industry. Then I will share some of my working experience as a translator, editor, as well as a project manager for the game division of Xie Innovations. After that, I will show you guys the perks of working in the game localization industry, as well as the challenges facing us. Last, if you ever wanted to be to have a career in the game localization industry, what do you do? Where do you begin with? What quality or skill set do you need to possess? And how do you improve yourself? I will share some of my suggestions. The game localization industry, before we get started, we need to have a general idea about the game industry. Let's see some numbers first. According to the statistics from Newzoo, which is a data analyst organization focusing on the game industry, the global game market reached $175.8 billion in 2021, showing a slight slow down comparing to 2020, but it's only because 2020 was too strong. That year is considered an unprecedented year for the game industry. The lockdowns in the first half of that year impact almost everyone's way of living and working. Now, as we walk into another wave of pandemic, I think it's the 5th wave in Hong Kong, right? Anyways, we begin to understand the extent to which the role of gaming has been irreversibly changed while everyone was confined indoors. The role of games became more meaningful than just another form of entertainment, with the outdated stigma around playing games dissolved. Games has truly become an extension of our world. It's a key destination for social gatherings, a means to celebrate live events, and more commonly, a way to blow the steam off. As we can see in the chart, Asia Pacific is the world's biggest region by game revenues, thanks to the main driver, which is China, and to be more specific, China's massively mobile-first game market, which means I guess which means that we will have more opportunities if we work in China in the game industry. Regarding the segment, the pandemic has had a profound impact on game development and publishing in terms of delays, mostly on console and PC games. You can see that in this chart, PC and console have both declined. The production of PC and console games involves bigger teams, more cross-country collaborations comparing to the mobile games. Of course, global semiconductor shortage has something to do with that too, because of the hardwares. The pandemic, however, has had a significantly fewer negative impacts on mobile games because it requires a little bit less work. Because mobile games rely more heavily on in-game purchases for currently popular and available titles. And of course, we know that there are lots of game players in the world, and it seems everyone around us is a game player. But how many of us exactly? In 2021, there are close to 3 billion players across the globe. It is up more than 5% year on year from 2020, showcasing that 2020's gaming boom has led to a lasting increase in players. The primary driver for the growth are an increase in the online population, better internet infrastructure, and affordable smartphone and mobile internet data plans. Well, we all know that the game market is huge, but not many of us can answer the question, how huge is it? I hope those 3 charts can give you guys a brief idea of the game industry. Let's get back to game localization. Game localization is a very important sector of the game industry, but what is it anyway? According to Wikipedia, game localization is the preparation of video game software and hardware for sale in a new region or country. Well, this is very scopus. I hope you guys enjoy learning that in your translation theory studies. And I believe you all have learned that I believe you all have learned the concept of localization, and you've already know that localization is more than translation. Here, the translation, I mean the translation in a narrow sense, not the whole idea. Translation is just a part of localization process, but I'm not sure if you guys know that. What are the process of game localization? Oh, here is it. Here is the very general workflow of the game localization. First of all, when we receive the files from the client, the project manager will prepare the files into a form that can be sent to the translator to get it translated. After the translators are done, the reviewer will check the translation, make sure everything is correctly translated. After that, the file will be sent to a proofreader. He or she will mainly focus on the readability, style, as well as the culturalization aspect of the translated texts. Then dubbing. Many of the games nowadays requires dubbing. In fact, many of them would even consider using the famous voice actors as a marketing stunt. When we finished converting source languages to target languages, there is a very important stage called LQA. I think this might be very new to a lot of you guys. So what is LQA? LQA stands for Localization Quality Assurance. It is the last stage in the game localization process. Primarily, it focuses on linguistic testing and translation quality review, but also covers UI, UX evaluation, compliance testing, culturalization, internationalization, functional tests, and more. So there are a lot of big words, but in short, people with expertise in gaming and local culture play and review the game, checking for errors and problems both linguistically and visually. So here is a question for you guys. If we already have reviewers and proofreaders in the project, why is LQA a necessary stage for game localization? I will leave you guys to think. Maybe we can circle back if we have time. So much about the introduction. Let's move on to the second part, which is about my company I work for and some works I've done. My company is called Xie Innovations. We ranked 38 this year in the Slater Language Service Provider Index. And as you can see here on the bottom, our top 3 sectors are engineering and manufacturing, gaming, and life science. As for my works, since I'm under a very strict NDA, I cannot share any ongoing projects. So I gathered some already released titles I've been working on, and I hope they can give you a brief idea about the opportunities you can get in this business. So first, Apex Legends. This is a battle royale shooter game developed by the creator of Titanfall, Respawn Studio, and published by the Electronic Arts. When EA first approached us about this project, we were told that this is just another sequel of Titanfall franchise. The game's release in February 2019 turned out to be a big success, which we never saw coming. It received generally positive reviews from the critics, and before Apex, whenever you step into an internet cafe in mainland China, you can see everyone is playing PUBG. In 普通话, it's 绝地求生. I'm not sure how it's translated in Hong Kong. Which is another famous battle royale game. which is released 2 years earlier than Apex in 2017. After Apex release, suddenly it's all the rage. Everybody is talking about it, and many of the players are switching to this game. And this game surpassed 25 million, 50 million within the first month. By last April, I think, it had approximately 100 million players, and making it one of the most played video games of all time by player count. If you ever played the simplified Chinese version of this game, then you're welcome. I am the reviewer of the Apex project. Next is my personal favorite, World of Warcraft. First released in 2004, this game redefined the MMORPG games. Its innovation were not necessarily original in isolation, but together they created a model for the genre as a theme park rather than just a simulation. I've been playing this game for over a decade. It has already become a part of my life. And it's also the reason this game and played the newest expansion, Shadowlands. And if you read the Amber Court weekly quests, you can see my works there. I translated many contents for these weekly quests. And next, if you ever played racing games as a child, you should have heard of Need for Speed. It's called 极品飞车 in mainland China and 极速快感 in Hong Kong and Taiwan. This series generally centers around illicit street racing and tasks players to complete various types of race while evading the local law enforcement in police pursuit. As a car-loving person, you can see the car on the background. I was thrilled that I got to be the reviewer of the 23rd installment of the Need for Speed franchise. It's called Need for Speed Payback in 2017. Among the games I mentioned or will mention today, Warhammer is the most unique one. It's a miniature war game produced by Games Workshop that simulates battles between armies using miniature figurines, and it's the most popular miniature war game in the world, particularly in the UK. As a miniature war game, players enact battles using miniature models of warriors and fighting vehicles. Games are typically played on a relatively flat surface, such as a dining table. Each player takes turns to move their models warriors around the battlefield and pretend that they are fighting each other. The Warhammer setting is inspired by the fiction of J.R.R. Tolkien, the creator of the Lord of the Rings. The fictional background for the game was developed in real books, and our job is to localize those rule books. If you ask me which project would be the most difficult one, I will say Warhammer without any hesitation. It is a challenge not only for my English reading skills, but also a test for my Chinese competence, let alone the use of tons of lingos and made-up words in this project. And the Battlefield series usually focus on large and online multiplayer battles. Players playing in squads has become a major element of this franchise. Apart from soldiers, also tanks, airplanes, and other vehicles may participate in this battle. I was at the localization team as a reviewer for Battlefield. I cannot share more details about the translation works I've done for the video games I just mentioned, but for Warhammer, since the rulebook was published, I can share something. This rulebook called Blackstone Fortress was published in 2018. Now, after 4 years, I can see that the Chinese translation could be improved here and there. But what I want to show you guys is that working in this industry means that we will encounter many types of games. Different category means different lingos and style. For example, when translating fantasy-based games like the World of Warcraft or Warhammer, a sense of epic in translation is much appreciated. When localizing epics, we need to prepare ourselves. We need to prepare ourselves with knowledge about battle royale gameplay, weapon glossaries, and even some basic Hawaiian and Norwegian, because the character on the right, the Gibraltar is a Hawaiian, and on the right, the Bloodhound is a Norwegian. They will use their native language in the game. In the same spirit, for Need for Speed series, we need to get ourselves familiar with the auto parts lingos, or otherwise you will get lost on what they are talking about under the hood. So after 3 years working as a translator and a reviewer, I switched to the role of project manager. Let's see some of my works as a project manager, since these are ongoing projects. Again, I cannot share more information. First of all, we localized the FIFA franchise for simplified Chinese and Korean. And for this mobile game Arknights, we provided localization service for their Japanese version. It's from simplified Chinese to Japanese. And as for Nier Automata, we localized it into Dutch, Russian, and traditional Chinese Taiwan. And last, the Sims, we take care of the simplified Chinese version of this game, simplified Chinese and traditional Chinese version of this game. Many of you might wonder, what's the difference between working in the game industry and the other industry? First of all, our efforts will be seen. In many other industries, such as finance, marketing, or IT, the linguists working on the projects remain anonymous. But for gaming, the majority of the game will list all the people in the production team into the credits. That includes the localization team. You can actually see your names on the credits. I know it's not much, but it's a form of appreciation and something to brag to your friends. We'd be lying if we didn't admit that this is a major benefit of the job. There is nothing cooler than being able to point to the game on the shelf at the store and say that you worked on the game, just like what I did to you guys. You will never, and then you will never worry again about the question regarding what do you do for a living, you can say that you can legally say that I translate games for a living. And video game translator is a valid career choice that appeals to many video game players. If you ever wanted to be a part of the production team of the game you like, but you don't know anything about the design, graphics, or dubbing, then localization could be a sound choice for you to get to know the industry. Working as a translator, you can get your hands on the raw materials of your favorite games. For example, the World of Warcraft and me. And then many old school people would consider gaming is not serious enough to be a real job. The truth is that video game translators usually get paid rather well. Many game companies will recruit in-house full-time linguists. Alternatively, video game translation is one of those careers where self-employment or freelancing is possible. In fact, many of our translators are full-time freelancers. Like any industry, video game design, a video game industry has its ups and downs, but as long as people need a way of relaxing, game always will be on the top list. When people are asked what they value in a job, a casual work environment often ranks quite high on the list. People don't want to feel stressed by conservative working environments while they are trying to work, especially if the job generates plenty of stress of its own accord. Luckily, careers in video game industry typically boast casual working environments. Video game people are relaxed and fun-loving rather than uptight and traditional. So enough with the benefits. What about the challenges? Working in the game localization industry, the number one problem you will encounter is definitely time, because games have limited shelf time. Many of the producers would want their games to be launched as soon as possible. So the deadlines we usually get would be rather tight. Put your own efficiency aside. How do you cope with the overwhelmed time pressure is always something a translator needs to think. Besides, localization is a teamwork. Team member could be anywhere in the globe. For example, you receive the translation tasks from your PM who is in the US, and your reviewer might live in France. How do you balance the time difference is also a question for you guys. The next thing we often encounter in this industry is that we usually will receive lousy source texts, especially the game companies in mainland China. The script you receive might not be prepared by professional script writers. They may be prepared by the game designers. You will see a lot of typos, inconsistencies, grammar errors, or sometimes the sentence are impossible to understand. A killjoy, of course, but how do you cope with that if you are new to this industry and you don't know, and you don't want to turn down the tasks? Next up, lingos. As I mentioned, there are a lot of there are so many types of games. Each of them has their own lingos. If you are not familiar with the glossaries, you will surely find it difficult and even frustrated. And a commonly run stereotype. Game translators usually won't be able to see how the translated texts appear in the game. It's not a job that you get to play the game all day. That's what the LQA testers will do. What we usually have would be the source text, some reference materials introducing the background of the game, the characters, and the nature of the texts, which is called string ID. Sorry. The string ID will tell us, is it a UI string, a dialogue, or it's a narration, a description, and very rarely they will provide us some reference pictures. We need to use our own judgment and experience to decide how to translate the source text. So those are the pros and cons that I can think of. But what about that I can think of as a translator or editor in the localization industry? But how about the role of PM? I know it's a little bit distant for you guys. So I'm only gonna show you guys 2 real life scenarios and leave you guys to think about it. Maybe we can circle back to discuss it if we have more time. These 2 challenges I encountered. These are 2 challenges I encountered in February and earlier this month. The first one is near the deadline and your colleague told you that the translator has gone missing and you've tried every way possible. You emailed, you Skyped, you called, and you just can't find the translator. What would you do? So this is the first question. And the second one is, I would say, more depressing. The Russian translator told you that he won't be able to finish the ongoing project because he feared that he won't be able to receive the payment because of the sanctions. What would you do to help him, or what would you say to him? And finally, I would like to share some of my suggestions. If you are a newbie, the #1 priority is to find your métier. You know, there are a lot of type of games. It's impossible for you to be good in every genre. So you need to identify which categories that you are good at, trying to get tasks from those categories. I believe that many of you are gamers. I found that very helpful that you switch the language settings to the source or CUHK languages when you play the game. I believe this is the quickest way to learn the lingos. You know, when you are playing games, you tend to be more concentrate. And this is literally learning while playing. So the next time your parents told you that to stop play the game, you can legally say that you are learning. I'm just joking. Don't tell your parents that it will backfire. And lastly, always ask questions. Because of the lack of visual aid, as well as the possible vague source text, we need to raise questions constantly. And don't be afraid, like your teachers. Our clients always welcome the questions. And what's the basic quality or skills that you should possess? The most important quality is punctuality, of course. We need to always remember that localization is a teamwork, which means that a delay in one of the stages would impact the whole workflow. If in poor management, a late delivery to the client would be inevitable, which is a total disaster. And secondly, for efficiency and quality purposes, localization agencies will usually use computer-aided translation tools such as Trados, MemoQ, MemoSource, etc. I believe the department has offered some related courses. It will be much helpful for you to know how to use them. And the third skill I want to mention is the editing skill. In other words, ability to sense that something is off. I've mentioned that the lousy source text would be one of the challenges that you will face in game localization industry, but how do you tell whether it's a source issue or it's just you not getting it? Do you have the guts to tell the clients that there is something wrong with the source text? I remember Duncan has offered a course called Bilingual Editing Skills for the MA program. If you registered for that course, don't miss it. It is really helpful. And the last, the creators often added many jokes and puns for the funny effects and the relaxation purposes. But how do you localize those puns and jokes into other totally different languages? You will, of course, need some transcreation abilities. And sometimes you might wonder how do I improve myself for the game localization industry. First of all, we need to monitor the news of the industry. Put in other words, you need to know what's new in the game community. You need to know if there are any high-profile new games released lately. What are people playing these days? And you need to familiarize yourself with those games because your next project might be in the same category. Because the game companies are like gazelles. They travel in packs. Take Battle Royale as an example. Ever since PUBG, every company is considering or trying to make their own Battle Royale games. Second, if you want to outshine your opponents, bilingual seems not enough anymore. I recommend you guys to learn a third language. Take the game companies in China, for example. Many of their scripts are originally written in Japanese or Korean. If you are fluent in Japanese or Korean, you can have an edge in the project. And the most common way to learn and to improve yourself is through feedbacks. In the feedbacks, you can be aware of your mistakes and weaknesses and know what to improve. So please always ask your project managers or reviewers for feedbacks. And that's all for my sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Zhiwei, for this wonderful talk and for sharing with us your professional and insider knowledge, as well as some very honest observation and advice. So I guess from today, after today's talk, we're all going to be playing video games with a new pair of eyes to recognize and pay attention to the effort of the localization team behind the screen. So now I think the floor is open for the audience for any questions to Zhiwei. Anything you are interested about the game localization industry profession? You can either raise your hand in the Zoom meeting and ask the question, or you can input the question in the chat box, and I will read that out for Zhiwei. Now I see one question in the chat box sent quite early during the talk. So the question is, I think it's quite simple. Where does translators try playing the game before translation?
Usually the game company will provide a trial version of the game to us, and the translators could play the game before, but that trial version could be very early. It's not final, so it's helpful, but it's not. Sometimes the contents you need to translate are not in that version, so it could give you a general idea of the game, but if you want to see what you are trying to what you are trying to translate in the game is nearly impossible.
Okay, and the next question in the chat box, someone's wondering how many words generally do game translators have to translate per day? Do you have the information?
It depends on your efficiency, of course. Generally speaking, it's 3,000 source words per day.
That's quite a lot, I guess. Do you find that's a lot workload?
How do I prepare myself?
No, sorry, that's okay. Another question is, how do ourselves prepare for a game localization internship? Do you have to have IT background to learn a little bit about coding or any other skills?
For game localization internship, a little bit IT background would be helpful, but it's not a must. It's definitely not a must. I personally, I don't know anything about coding before I joined the localization team.
Okay, I guess, can I have a follow-up question to that?
Of course.
Do you need to have any experience with playing video games? If, say, someone who's...
If someone is completely new to video games, then no, I think it's not possible. So, some of my colleagues in the different department of our company, they don't know anything about games, and they find our files very difficult to understand.
Okay, so that's to say, if you are going to work in the localization team, you will have to have certain experience with video games, right? And the more the better, I assume.
Yes, of course.
Okay, and the next question, what are the differences between PM, project manager, and the translator in a team?
I'm gonna answer this in 普通话 if that's okay. So 项目经理的话是一般来说是统筹管理整个项目的，然后translator 翻译的话是他可能是只负责其中的某一个部分，就是翻译这个部分的。所以项目经理的话，他一般来说是可能从跟客户的对接就开始，在这个项目里面了，然后一直到整个项目的交付。然后翻译的话，可能就是项目经理给这个翻译一个文件，然后让这个翻译翻完了之后，然后交给项目经理，然后翻译的工作就完成了。大致的理解，就是最初级的理解，应该就是这样。
Okay, and the next question, that's actually the question you leave for us, but how do you deal with the situation you just mentioned? I'm also curious. with
一般一
the
般来说，
translator
一
disappeared?
一般来说的话，就是我们一般会给自己的项目会留一些缓冲的时间，就是专门为了应对这些意想不到的突发情况。然后针对这一次这个项目，这个翻译突然失踪了来说，我们到现在为止，我们还是没有联系上他。呃呃，上次那个项目的话，就是我们中途就直接换了一个人，然后大家就所有人就只有加班来把那个项目赶出来，因为已经快到交期了，然后突然发现他人没了。
So the translator's ethics is very important. And
一般
another
来说，我们的翻译基本上都是freelance，就是兼职的翻译，他不会来全职坐班，所以我们也没有办法掌握他到底人是在哪里，他在干什么，我们只能是把这个项目委托给他，让他翻译，但是他人突然不见了，我们真的没有办法。
Okay, and another very practical question. So, what specific positions can we graduates? I assume that means the MA graduates, maybe, with just a translation background apply for.
呃，一般来说的话，在这个行业中，一般来说，有两种。如果说你有一定的游戏经验，然后有一定的游戏翻译经验的话，你呃可以去申请 LQA 测试员的工作，就是我刚刚提到的那个 LQA 的那个工作。LQA 的话，就基本上是整天都在玩游戏，在游戏里面边玩边找错误。然后翻译的话，就是就会比较稍微枯燥一点了。
Okay, and the next question is also, I guess, related to the LQA, which I think is a new concept to many of us. So generally, how do you assess the language quality of a localized game, of a translation? And will you modify or revise your translation after it's released?
对于游戏这种电子产品来说的话，我先回答它的第二个问题，就是对于游戏的这种电子产品来说的话，一般来说，里面如果有错误的话是可以改的，然后就大不了游戏再发一个补丁，在补丁里面把那个错误改正就完了。然后第一个问题的话，因为整个本地化的流程来说，是有很多个步骤的，就不光是一个翻译翻完了之后，翻译翻完了之后，会跟一个校对，会跟一个润色，然后完了之后，最后还有 LQA 再检查，所以这些流程其实都是为了保证语言质量来添加的。并不是说，如果说就是为了纯粹追求速度的话，可能就翻译翻完了我们就交了。但是为了保证质量的话，我们会后面所以才会加校对、润色，然后 LQA 这些步骤上去，来保证语言的质量。
Okay, to the next question. Sometimes some gaming companies, they will have their own game localization departments or teams. So what do you think of it compared to working for a professional translation organizations?
就目前的游戏行业的状况来讲是，呃，虽然说有很多公司，有很多游戏公司，他们确实是有自己的本地化团队，但是他们公司发展还有一些其他因素的影响吧，他们没有办法自己把自己的所有东西全部都本地化完毕。就比如说米哈游，他们本来是所有的游戏都是自己在翻，就原神那家公司，就是他们所有游戏都是自己在翻。然后从来不会外包出来。但是他们目前来说，他们的本地化团队也吃不消了，他们没有办法处理这么大的文字量，而且怎么说呢？就是说，呃，就比如说你公司是在中国国内，但是你是想要做全世界所有的语种，其实全世界就是主要的那十几个语种的话，你是没有办法在中国国内把所有的人都找到的。如果你想 组建，就是所有东西都自己做的话是没有办法做到的，所以它是势必会把这些任务分发出来给本地化公司来做的。如果说你有机会去申请到游戏公司的本地化团队的话，也是一个特别不错的特别不错的机会吧。但是它唯一有一点局限的来说，就是它可能接触到的游戏类型会比较少，因为它一个公司它可能在一段时间内，它就只会推那几款游戏，那几款游戏可能也就是那几个游戏类型。如果你说你想接触很多游戏类型的话，你可能还是得考虑一下其他的本地化公司这样。
Okay, and then we have, I guess, a series of very practical
啊，
questions. So
呃
first of all, what about the working hours? And also, I guess I see some questions about the payment for working in a localization team, and also full-time and part-time job. What's the difference? What's the possibilities?
一般来说的话，如果说你就是工作时长，这个其实是看个人的啦。就我们有一些，我们这边有一些兼职翻译，他们是有些人是可以接受很长的工作时长的，然后有一些人是当成是全职工作在做，他们就可能就只能是接受每天8个小时，然后周末是需要双休，然后有一些人是无所谓，反正只要给钱就可以，就是还是这个是看个人的，不是说谁能给你规定的。
And how do the LQA work get paid? Is it by words, by the length
哦，
of the text, or by
呃
hour?
it's by hours，因为 LQA 的工作是没有办法用字数来衡量的，它只能看你花了多少时间来玩这款游戏，然后你可能花了多少时间来报错，这样，它只能是按照时间来算。
And two questions about the ratio of full-time employers and part-time employers. As you just mentioned, some of our translators are freelancers and maybe working part-time.
如果说你只是想怎么说呢？这个还是看个人吧。如果说你家里或者你自己对五险一金比较看重的话，你可能还是需要找一个全职工作。然后一般来说全职工作总的来说两者的收入是差不多的，然后但是相当于全职工作会有五险一金，但是兼职工作的话，你可能单笔的收入会高一些，因为没有公司给你交五险一金，你会需要自己交嘛，大概就是这样。其实二者的收入是差不多的。
And there's someone still wondering if you can give us some more suggestions for translation graduates who want to work in this industry. And also, what do you think are the strengths and weakness of our MA graduates in this field?
呃，我先回答第二个问题吧，就是那个 strengths and weaknesses，就是说，我知道我们的 MA 的学生肯定是在英语水平上是会比较好一点的，这个就是应该来说是最大的一个优势了。然后劣势的话，可能是如果你之前没有游戏行业的相关经历的话，游戏行业或者是关于游戏这方面的翻译的相关经历的话，你可能会一开始没有办法适应，那个这边的那个一些 source text，它会写的非常的奇怪，就是可能一开始没有接触过这方面东西的人的话，他可能会一来就看不懂，大概是这样。就我们这边其实经常会遇到，就是很多人大概他们的英语水平都很好，但是呃 做下来做我们的测试的话，他们其实并没有办法得到很高的分，其实就是对于对于游戏术语的不了解。
Sorry, I guess I've been kicked out from this meeting because of my poor internet connection. So is there any other questions?
How do you？
还有没有大家还有没有其他的问
然后
题？
我看到这边有一个问题说是，请问只有 PM 和 LQA 是全职在公司工作的吗？然后这个部门的兼职都是翻译吗？这个部门的翻译都是兼职吗？LQA 和 PM 基本上是全职在公司的，然后也会有一些全职的翻译和校对在公司，但是就我们公司来说，我们大部分的翻译是以兼职的形式和我们合作的。
Okay, I see two new questions.
然后全职工作是必须要来公司上班，理论上来说是的，但是还是要看公司和要看公司的一些企业文化吧。有些公司是无所谓，就是你可以在家工作，然后但是一般来说就是一般来说公司还是会要求你去坐班的。所以如果你觉得是想要 work from home 的话，可能还是兼职可能更适合你一些。
Okay, and there's another question asking you for contact details for further communication. I will leave
可以
that
的
to you too as well.
可以的
But
可以的。
it's interesting that Frank mentioned this concept of internationalization industry, right? I also see this word in your
我看到
slide
了。
about the LQA.
哦
就是这个 internationalization 和 localization，可能很多同学不是特别清楚，其实是有什么区别吗
这个感觉很不好回答，太过于学术了，我也不知道。
？Okay, okay. Still we have a lot of more practical
我看到还
questions.
有说是签约了之后，大概什么时候会派稿？这个只能说是，一方面是看你在那个就是通过测试的时候的一个评价吧，然后还有一方面就是说你可以胜任的语种，因为现在因为大家都知道国内的那个审批卡得很严，基本上没有游戏可以在国内很快的上线。现在上线的游戏基本上都是好几年、2、3年前的游戏，才终于审批完毕才上线了。然后现在一般的游戏公司是做出海的，就是说从中文往其他的语种翻译。所以说，如果说大家的擅长的方向是英文译中文，可能就反正我们公司到现在也没有什么太多的英文到中文的项目，但是我们这边比较多的就是中文到其他语种的，就比如说中到英、中到日、中到韩，然后还有一些德法西普和这些语种。
Okay, I guess it's really about the time for the last question, but I guess it's a very tough question. 这个工资的问题可以说吗？
啊，工资，不好意思，我不能透露工
对，
资的
可能还
问题。
是大家以后如果有机会
这个
自己做一些，
工资的话，其实说实话是一般来说是会，按照你做了多少来开工资，就不会是一个固定的工资。对于本地化公司来说，一般来说是按你做了多少来，就是按绩效来。但呃，如果说是游戏公司的本地化团队的话，好像就是一个比较固定的一个工资。
Yes, for those who are interested, try for yourself and you will know. Okay, with all these interesting questions, we are close to the end of today's talk as the talk is scheduled for 1 hour. So thank you very much again, Zhiwei, for your sharing and your time. And we do hope we can invite you back in the future for any update of your work and for any further insights into this field. And I should also like to thank you all who have joined us online today for your participation and for your questions. Do pay attention to our website or follow us on WeChat or Instagram for announcement of more professional talks in the future. So do come and join us again. But for now, thank you very much. Have a nice evening and we will see you very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.